wonder what you think of just being able to wrangle those guest stars in this third season, and if you have any aspirations for who else could appear in Abbott.
You know, with the Eagles was very, that was cool because, you know, this is where you get cool exclusive stuff, but like, Jalen Hurts had reached out multiple times and it's been like, I love this show. Like, my family watches this show. I'd love to be on this show. So when we were like, okay, like, all right. That was when we were in the middle, that was when we were doing our second season, and it was like, we don't have, thank you for telling us, but we didn't have anything for him, anything organic. We really do try to make organic things happen. So season 3 premiere, I knew that, you know, I wanted something special, and the Eagles are very special to me as a Philadelphian, and I, you know, remember Jalen had been, yes, go Birds. And then I knew Jalen wanted to be a part of it, so we were like, oh, let's write Jalen this part. We knew we wanted to have the Eagles there to help Melissa in the proposal, but then they were like, well, we got some other guys for you. Jason Kelsey wants to be in it, and Brandon Graham, and I was like, oh my, this is incredible. It was an embarrassment of riches. They were just incredible. They were in the middle of their season, but they took the time to film that. We sent one of our ADs to Philly to help them do it over Zoom. We didn't want to make it hard for them, so it wound up being on Zoom. And for Bradley, Bradley was like another one where I was just like, oh, wait, we have Bradley Cooper? Okay, I guess, what do we do with Bradley Cooper? But Bradley was actually incredible because we talked for weeks leading up to it about what he could do. He's a Philly boy, so it wasn't far-fetched to have him be in the neighborhood. But, you know, someone like Bradley Cooper, it would have felt weird for him to come play a character in our world, honestly. Like, he's a movie star. He looks like one, he talks like one, it just would have been weird. So it was better for him to play himself. And it was just, we wanted something splashy after the Oscars as a student of comedies or TV after a big event. You want to have a big splashy cold open so that people who have never seen your show before decide to keep it on. And Bradley being a part of that was incredible. A funny thing he told me was that, or he showed me on his phone that David Fincher was texting him like, man, you're in this show. And then David Fincher just kept watching the whole episode. And that's what you want. You want to make a good splashy cold open, so I guess David Fincher keeps watching the show.
Joining in season 1 and what your expectations were for where Abbott was going to go and where it has ended up.
When I first came in, when we shot the pilot, there was a moment in the pilot, I think, when we're carrying the rugs in, and having done a good amount of TV before this, it felt special, it felt unique, it felt like, I remember I turned to Cheryl and I was like, you feel that, don't you? Like, we're gonna be here for a while. So there was already this sense of, we were kind of on the precipice of something really special, but even in the midst of that, I don't think you can fully prepare for the whirlwind that's been the last 2.5 years. I don't like, it feels like the pilot was simultaneously last week and 7 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's, you know, I think it just speaks to the strength of how TV affects people in their lives, and network TV and where it can be, specifically network comedies and how they resonate with people.
Welcome back, Mike Fleming.
Ava DuVernay's Selma, and boy, but this one, I think, kind of turns a page in the way we look at David. So in this Paramount 101 Studios series, and that's part of the Taylor Sheridan universe. So why don't we sit down? This is, should I say, long-suffering wife? You can say. You know, so I want to start this way. So Chad, you know, you spent a lot of time shaping Ray Donovan, who's one of my favorite TV tough guys. Now, the way I've always thought of David his superpower is his empathy, and he's just as somebody that you gravitate towards, and it's worked great in movies, even when you turned out to be a bad guy, because you know, the sleight of hand was right there. So, but Bass Reeves is one of the biggest badass guys that I've seen come along on a TV screen in a good long time. Can you guys tell me what went into turning our lovely David into just somebody who you just don't want to be on the business end of his six-shooter?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this to you out in the hall. David is the most talented individual I've ever been around. And the only thing that sort of supersedes his talent and his work ethic is his humanity. And so to turn Bass or David into a badass wasn't really that difficult, because this man's talent is so extraordinary that, you know, it seemed to me, I know it wasn't effortless for him, but it seemed effortless.
The thing you most loved as you made that transformation into Bass and a character who was so adept at horseback riding and so convincing in a shootout, that's a guy you want by your side. What was that like? What was the toughest part, and what was the most gratifying part?
Well, first thing to say, it just never gets old to see your head the size of a house. I was sat there going, whoa, that's me! It just never gets old. Actually, there was nothing I hated, because the idea of playing Bass Reeves was first presented to me in 2014. And I naively thought that, having done a little bit of a dive, this extraordinary character, of course we're going to get to make this show. Of course, every studio, every network, every cable, streamers didn't even exist back then, is going to want to do this. And we got roundly rejected by everyone, twice, with a 2-year gap in between. And so by the time we were actually shooting this, it had been an 8-year journey for me, trying to get this thing made. So the horse riding, the dialect work, the, you know, working on every aspect alongside Chad, who just did the most extraordinary job of bringing this character to life, because he had a 32-year career as a lawman. So distilling it down to an essential part of his story in order for it to be something that the audience can gravitate towards was very much in Chad's hands and that writer's room's hands. But because it had taken so long to come to fruition, honestly, every day was a blessing for me, because my dream was literally coming true before my eyes. As a 6-year-old kid, up until, you know, into my teens, I was obsessed with Westerns.
Also a good boy, but not as good a boy, but way cuter.
He's a bit cuter.
So we had like good boy and hot boy.
Yeah.
And then
So we open the show with hot boy,
yeah.
and then we substitute with good boy.
Yeah.
But no dogs were hurt in the making of this Meet Cute.
Not one bit.
No dogs.
There was so much care taken for that dog lying on the road that, like, it was a hot day in Sydney. We had to put like ice packs on the ground.
Oh yeah.
We were fanning it. He was looking so happy.
A lot of humans were hurt, but the dog's fine.
Yeah.
There was a moment when the art department rushed over and said, "So with the dog, you know, here, do you want us to put some like fluids or blood around?" We're like, "No, what are you joking? People switch off immediately."
Yeah, no one's gonna.
The dog's fine.
No fluids.
The dog makes it.
Yeah.
Give it up!
Actually, we shot that bit at about 3:30 in the afternoon, like when school was out.
A lot of kids walking past.
It was so funny, like the 80s are all like, "Oh, you might just want to keep your kids back." Anyway.
There was a lot of hullabaloo about Harry doing it, and once she shot it, she couldn't put it away. She was like,
"Oh, do you want another angle? What's happening?"
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah,
Pick your frames, let's
on
go.
that, or...
Anyway, it's there. It's probably on some very weird other websites.
Best not to think about it.
You guys are the two writers on the show. You don't have a writer's room.
We do not.
No, unfortunately. I mean, we have a room that we write in.
How are you guys as a writing duo? Are you just throwing around ideas? I know that you guys maybe pick some stuff out of real life.
Yeah, we pull out a couple things. I mean, it's probably the healthiest and most respectful part of our relationship is us as writers.
Easily.
And then us as actors and producers, and then like as
And parents.
husband and wife, we're just like, get out of my sight. But no, we write it all. We, to our credit and our detriment, you know, we're kind of control freaks about it.
But
we
we
just
do
finished season 2.
Yeah, we just lost season 2 back in Australia.
She's coming to you soon.
Yeah.
We're tired.
But we do Bowerbird from our own lives, for sure, and from our friends' lives and people we know, and hopefully, you know, nobody notices that it's them on the screen.
And if they do, they've got like a special thanks in the credits.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, but that never happened. That was all fiction.
Yeah, that's a
We
bit
didn't do
fiction.
it. We didn't do it. But
Yeah.
That's not how you guys met.
no, we just met like normal people.
Yeah. No dogs, no nipples. That all came later.
Oh, good lord, yeah. Hi.
So, what's the Brammall?
Successfully, I might add, of course, with Game of Thrones. And Alexander, your work on True Blood, I feel like you have this fantasy, horror, murder, mystery heritage behind you. Tell us about...
That wasn't exactly unadaptable, though.
No, well, okay, I'll give you that. But it definitely struck some chords in the whole fantasy, horror, murder, mystery categories, right? And I feel like as a trio, it's really interesting to hear how you collaborated and developed this story. Tell us about coming to it, what you knew of the book, and how you came to this vision together.
I mean, the first thing that we knew of the book was that Barack Obama, the President of the United States, had given a glowing blurb to a Chinese science fiction novel, which, to the best of my knowledge, is not generally the way things go with presidents of the United States or Chinese science fiction novels. So it immediately piqued our interest, and then when Peter Friedlander from Netflix mentioned the books, I mean, I think I already had it on my Kindle in my stack of things to read, but it had fallen to the bottom of the stack, and David and I read them both over the course of like maybe a month or two, and I guess fittingly enough, on our last official duties on Game of Thrones, a press trip to Japan, we were on our way back from the press trip to Japan when we both finished the series within 10 minutes of each other, and I walked over to his seat and I looked him in the eye, and because after reading the final like 10 pages of Cixin Liu's trilogy, it really, I don't want to spoil anything other than to say they blew me away, and I wanted to make sure that reaction was not idiosyncratic, but was like a real reaction that someone else that I trusted would have. So I walked over to your seat, and I saw the same look in his eyes that I imagine I had in my own.
Things that we were handed the responsibility of doing was the English language adaptation of these novels. So it had to be primarily in English. So out of necessity, we needed the cast to be mostly speaking English, though a lot of the Chinese flashbacks were very much intact, which we're very grateful for. But it afforded us an opportunity to tell a global story. This is a story of how all of humanity either comes together or doesn't come together to face an existential threat. And if you're going to feature the world, you might as well represent the world. And that's what we took great pains to try to do.
And tell me also about casting specifically, because I feel like the cast of this is extraordinary. It's extraordinarily broad range of people. I had the pleasure of running into Jonathan Pryce at the SAG Awards, and I had just started episode 1 at that point, and he comes up to me and I went, "Oh, I've just been watching you in Three Body Problem," and he goes, "Did you understand it?" And I can't lie, I'm rubbish at lying, and I just started it. So of course, you know, I'm like, okay, I don't know quite what's happening, it's episode 1. And I was suddenly transported back to high school with my physics professor's disappointed face. Except it's Sir Jonathan Pryce with disappointment. But anyway, tell us about casting these amazing people.
It varies from actor to actor, but Zine, for instance, who was in the scene we just saw, she was one of the last people we cast. We were looking everywhere for an actor to fill that role, and all over the world, and then somehow found her at USC. She was a student at USC. We saw her tapes. We thought, well, she's really interesting. And then we set up a Zoom. So it was the 3 of us, Derek, the director, and Zine, and our casting director for the Chinese roles, who was in China. And I don't remember if Derek was in England with us or he was in Hong Kong at that point.
Derek was in Hong Kong.
Derek was in Hong Kong.
He was in LA. We were in England.
Right.
And
So
Sun Yan was in China.
Right. So everyone's experience with Zoom at this point, it was not a good connection because like 4 different countries, and in the middle of these very intense emotional scenes, the connection kept freezing, and Zine would be in the middle of just emoting and just being so powerful, and then we'd lose Derek, and we'd say, oh, so sorry, Zine, can you hold on a second? And this happened like 4 times in a row, I'm not exaggerating, and I think a lot of people would have just been broken by it, like how do you maintain that intensity again and again and again? And somehow she did. What did she make? Some kind of like weird noises?
She would go just off camera for a second, so we wouldn't see what. She's physically not very big, and she would go off camera, and we would hear this. I'm going to do this away from them. Hear this That didn't seem like it could be a sound made by human
This wasn't concerning to you, or?
And then she would come right back and she'd be right in it. It was incredible. It was really one of the most extraordinary auditions.
You're like, this is who we need to cast.
It was, Benedict Wong, we always knew from the beginning, we want Benedict Wong to play this role, and
the detective.
The detective, and he was the only actor we wanted and the only actor we went to, and luckily he said yes. But and I remember again the 3 of us Zooming with him. He was in a trailer in England, I think, doing another show, and just watching him and listening to him, it was like that's the character that's the man we've been writing for this whole time. So, and John Bradley, we basically wrote that role for him. So it really does vary from part to part. Like sometimes you're just finding these people like who you've never heard of before, who are incredible actors, and sometimes in the beginning, like we want John Bradley, we want Benedict Wong. So yeah.